Hi there, my name's Jeff Okeson, and I have the privilege of serving as Dean of the University of Kentucky College of Dentistry. And I have a special guest with us today, and he was my dean when I was a dental student, Harry Bohannon. And Dr. Bohannon was the dean. He was the second dean of our college. And we have an opportunity to listen to some stories that he might have at the beginning of our college, which is very meaningful to us. And so I asked him if he would sit down and just make a conversation. So this is very casual. We'll just talk about things, and wherever it goes, it goes. And if it's going to go into golf, it'll be into golf. And I will share with you, I will share this story. When I called Dr. Bohannon about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I hadn't talked to Dr. Bohannon in 50 years. And I wasn't sure how ambulatory he was. And so it was very sharp on the phone and all that. And I was hoping he would come up to the ceremony that we're going to have, a dedication we're going to have this week. And then he said to me in a hurry, he says, "Jeff, I got to get off the phone. I got a tea time." Well, that told me something about how good you were doing. So I think that was great like that. So, Harry, welcome back to Lexington.
Thank you. Nice to be back in my office.
This is your office. Exactly right.
Well, it's Al Morris's office, not mine.
Well, I will share, and I've shared with you before. That's why I have this picture right here, because that's a picture of Al when he came here for the 50th anniversary.
Right.
And I got a picture of him there. I got one of you last week, too. Okay? So now I have to put that over there with it like that.
Mine's under the wastebasket.
Yeah. No, not yet. So, but it is a privilege for me to sit in this office knowing all the things that happened here in 1961 and 62 and the development of this school. And for the audience standpoint, I want people to know that this school did some remarkable things back in the early 60s. And it started with an invitation. This building went up, an invitation to Dr. Al Morris to come and be the dean. Now here's a 33-year-old dentist from Pennsylvania, and he accepted the invitation. He was challenged with 4 different things. He was challenged with furnish this building. He was challenged with get a faculty. He was challenged with begin a curriculum, and then get a class, all in 1 year. That's a daunting task for anybody in 1 year. What Dr. Morris did he went out and found about 5 other individuals, one of which was Dr. Bohannon, to join him in this team. And with Dr. Bohannon and the others in this team, they did some remarkable things that I'd like to sort of talk about and ask about that, okay? So if we could start, Dr. Bohannon, give me a little idea of your background in dentistry before you got to be here at UK.
Well, I graduated from University of Louisville and had an internship in the Public Health Service. Spent 3 years there. Came back, practiced a year in Louisville, and decided I needed more than that. So I went to the most renowned perio program in the country. That was at the University of Pennsylvania. And from there, I went to the University of Washington to teach. And when Al got in touch with me, I'm a Kentuckian, and I was anxious to get home. And actually, he didn't have to twist my arm. I would have walked home from Seattle to take the job here. Mm-hmm. So I've had a great career, and Al Morris is responsible for my life, from all the things I've done, and can go. He's the source of it.
Yeah. Well, so it must have been a pretty daunting task to get a phone call from Dr. Morris and say, "Come join me and start this dental school."
Well, as I say, I would have begged for it.
So let's go back to those early years when you came on with and Dr. Morris and the curriculum coming together, and you started looking at the way dentistry was traditionally taught at that time. So tell me about what your thoughts were of things.
Well, there 5 of us came, actually 6, with Dan Deal was the only non-dentist, and he, Mike Romano, Steve Dacey, Roy DeRocher, and me, along with Al. Roy and Mike had been with Al at the University of Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
Steve Dacey had also spent a year in Al's lab, although he was at Indiana then, I think, instead of Pennsylvania. I was the only outsider of the bunch,
Mm-hmm.
the only one that Al didn't know all that well, but he'd been, he knew of me from Penn.
Mm-hmm.
So we came together, a group of people who were all unhappy with their dental education. I hated every minute of it.
Hmm.
And I didn't like the way I was treated. I didn't like the attitude, although our dean at Raymond Myers was a first-class gentleman. And but the faculty didn't treat us all that well, and I said when we came, we all had felt that way. The education program itself was a little different in all of the schools we represented, but we all had some chip on our shoulder,
Mm-hmm.
and we said we want to change this. And instead of students being subject to fiefdom, we decided they were going to be colleagues. We were going to trust them. We were going to wear white coats. We were going to call them doctor, and they were going to be colleagues, and we were there to help them. If they're smart enough to get into school, we're smart enough to get them out of school. So that was the big thing. It was our unhappiness with the way we were treated. We didn't like the idea you went to essentially medical school for 2 years for the basic sciences. Then you tried to teach them to be a dentist in 2 years. We wanted them to be involved with patients in some way from the first month they were in school. And we also wanted them to be able to relate to the basic sciences when they graduated. One example of that was when I graduated and went to an internship in a hospital, I couldn't write a prescription. I didn't know one drug from another. So we tried to change that and have pharmacology in the senior year and focus on the 10 most prevalent diseases that a dentist is going to be facing, and the drugs related to those, and the interrelationship, pro and con, with those drugs. So the idea was to start the clinical training early and to carry the basic sciences late.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of our founding principles.
And so you started the diagonal curriculum. It was
That's
the
right.
Kentucky
That's right.
Diagonal Curriculum, right?
That's right.
And it was published.
That's right. I think December Journal of Dental Education, 1962, I believe.
I think you're right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it became a pretty good standard in teaching people to be dentists, didn't it?
Well, we were called the first of the second generation dental
Mhm.
schools
That's right.
because other schools immediately, well, not immediate, but other schools saw it and it made sense and it was adopted. I don't know how it is today,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think any school, you go to medical school for 2 years and then go to dental school.
No.
That's,
Now you guys made a wonderful contribution to all of dental education from that, because everybody has moved in that direction for sure.
but it was Al Morris that did it. We had a team. We were a team, and in addition to the curriculum, and you talk about, we came here. 4 of us had different jobs. Mike Romano equipped this building. When we came, there wasn't a stick of furniture in it. There wasn't a dental explorer in it. There was nothing. So that first year, from July 5th, 1961, Mike went to work furnishing this building.
Okay.
Steve Dacey, one of the best minds I ever was associated with, actually took over what I now call the public relations. He put on continuing education programs. The first ever in the state of Kentucky was in this building, and Steve selected people, ran that. I recruited students and ran the admissions program. Roy DeRocher kind of helped Al a bit with the day-to-day operation, but Al then focused on recruiting the faculty. And the faculty recruitment was a different story, I think, than it is now. We identified people from around the country, from our different fields. I knew I was involved with prosthetic dentistry a bit, and Judd Hickey was the shining light there. Shell Rovin and Oral Path from Michigan, Al knew him. Stan Sachs from Seattle. John Mink was in Indiana. We went after these people, and Al was the primary recruiter. Now, recruiting, at that point, we had no recruiting budget. We could pay their expenses, but Al, primarily Al, we had people come in and we did potluck suppers. All of the wives pitched in together, and we couldn't take them to restaurants. We didn't have the money for that.
No budget, huh?
It was enough for us to just buy the booze, and that was more important than food. So Al had a house that he'd rented out on Tates Creek Road. It was a big old Southern Kentucky house with a lot of room, and we had a lot of recruiting there. And back to the building, Mike was also aided there by Dan Deal, who was a lab man from Philadelphia, and he took care of all of the setting up all of the labs. So those are the things that went on. Everybody had a job. We were a team. There was no bickering, no overt bickering. We disagreed at times, but it didn't interfere with the cooperation of getting the job done. And we all took great pride in that. One of the things that we felt very strongly about was trusting students. When I went to dental school, we had to be out of the building by 5:15. We wanted the students to use the facilities of the building. They all got a key, they got a white coat, and we felt we wanted to trust them, and hopefully they would trust us.
Yeah. And that faculty you develop, as I think about it, you also had Harry Lundeen came in?
Well, he was not the first.
Not the first, no.
No, he came, the end of the second year, probably, Harry came. Yeah, and
you also attracted Gordon Christensen, you attracted Will Prophet.
yeah, that's right.
You talk a lot of, I mean, this school really had some superior
It was
people.
All of those people were actually tops in their field,
Yeah,
every one of them.
absolutely.
Al had identified Bill Prophet some way. I'm not, but Bill came. I had been on the faculty at the University of Washington with Gordon, and Gordon was a superb teacher, a superb restorative dentistry man. And we realized we were in trouble. In about the second year, those of us who had been involved in kind of advanced restorative dentistry realized that we had to do something. And we fortunately got Gordon to come and take over the restorative dentistry. That was a big step forward.
Super. You know, you mentioned something to me the other day about an interesting concept. You wanted to bring the students in early, which makes all the sense in the world, so they get this full training. But you also said you didn't want them to start off by seeing failures.
That's right.
Tell me that. That's an interesting concept.
Well, it's a tribute to the people that came. We call this a periodontally oriented curriculum because we felt very strongly that we didn't want to start with full dentures. We didn't want students to look at an edentulous patient and say, well, that's our future. We wanted them to look at people that still had teeth and talk about prevention and get them sold on prevention as the future, not full dentures. And Judd Hickey, whose field was prosthetics and full dentures, went along with that without batting an eye. There was no periodontics. As our classes graduated, to a man, they always said, wherever they went, they would go into the service, wherever they went, they knew more periodontics than anybody they were associated with, because we started them early and we pushed them pretty hard at that. So we were periodontally oriented, and that was instead of full denture oriented, as I had been when I went to dental school.
So when you look back at the foundation that you established, you developed a diagonal curriculum, get them in early.
Yep.
You centered around a collegiate attitude with your students, treating them as peers, which was very unique, and I'd like to think we still do that here now.
Good.
You also did something else. You looked at not just this tooth or that bridge, but the whole patient. And some of the things that you taught as far as what was important is understanding all the biology of the patients. In fact, tell us a little bit about the triad.
Well, the triad, was Al Morris. Al developed the triad and presented that to the University Administration before he came. That he wanted to create a dentist who was biologically oriented, technically capable, and socially sensitive. Now, for socially sensitive, what's that? He wanted the students to give back to the community. The whole time he was here, as busy as we were and as jammed as the schedule was, he always had time to go to the luncheons of the Kiwanis Club or whatever they were. Several. He was into the social, community social activity, and he wanted that to be part of the students' perception that they were there to give to the community. Al, before he came, he wrote a document, the role of the dental school in a university. That's about an 18-page document that we still have a copy of, and gave it to Dr. Willard, and said, if this doesn't fit with your idea of a medical center, then I'm not the person for you.
Wow.
He also wrote, We cannot find it. I don't know why I don't have a copy of it. A 27-page document, as I remember, it was 27, on what he expected of a faculty. And we would give that to anybody we were thinking about recruiting and say, read that. If you don't agree with it, don't even bother to answer the phone.
Yeah.
This is the way it is. This is the way it's going to be.
Yeah.
And one of the things we ran into, there were times we had to replace people. All of us, and we would grow up and when we were in dental school and wax patterns, for example, you do a wax pattern of a crown or an inlay, and the instructor look at it and just go like that and say, that's no good, throw it away. And Al said the first person that does that is out of here the next day. And it happened once. And that was that.
Wow.
He was out of here the next day.
Wow.
It was that.
That's powerful.
Yep.
Yeah, that's going by the commitment and the mission of the college.
That's right. And we're not going to treat students that way.
That's nice. Yeah. Let me ask you this one, because when you first came to you and Al and everybody came, what was the environment like? Were you well accepted? Did you have some issues?
Well, the dental profession in the state of Kentucky at that time was totally against a second dental school. My stepfather was a dentist in Louisville, and when I told him I was going to come from Seattle he said, wait a minute. He said, that I don't know whether that thing's going to make it or not. Al, when the word got out that Al was being considered as dean, and he was at the University of Pennsylvania, had a big cancer grant, was a rising star. The president of the American Dental Association then, Harry Lyons, who was dean at the Medical College of Virginia, dean of dentistry, called Al and told him in no uncertain terms, you're going to commit suicide if you take that job. And his contention was the dentists are going to kill it. The dentists were waiting for the legislature to meet in '62, and they had a campaign. They were all going to their representatives, 35% of which were in Louisville, and that was the kind of the controlling dental group. And they figured they could tie up the legislature and stop any finances. Al was told by one of the real politicians in the state, punched him in the chest and said, Morris, you won't last a year in Lexington. Al poked him back in the chest and said, I'll be there when you're dead and gone. So the dentists were dead set against it, and the reasoning was Kentucky was too small, or Kentucky didn't have the finances for 2 dental schools. That the city of Lexington was too small to provide the patients needed.
Well, now you told me that eventually some of the dentists came to the side, like Vince Barr.
That's right. Vince Barr in Frankfurt was one of the dentists that was really respected. He was not the typical dentist politician. He was quiet. He was thoughtful, but when he took a position, people listened. And one of them told me one time, when you got Vince Barr, we said maybe something's all right for those people. And there were others. I think Carl Lang, who was here in town, came over.
Tell me a little bit about the history, as you were a lot of being in charge of recruiting the class. How did you find some students?
Spent a lot of time on the road. Visited every college in the state. Talked to the pre-medical advisors. There weren't very many pre-dental advisors. We put together the application to dental school and required a letter of recommendation from a Kentucky dentist. Those letters came in, but we weren't too interested in their recommendation. We were interested in having them acknowledge we were here. And that gave us a chance then to write them back and thank them. That was part of the public relations thing. The biggest part of that, though, get back to Steve Dacey's continuing education program. He put together kind of mini diplomas and framed them. And the dentist would take those home, and they all want to put them on their wall. So
good PR.
They have a University of Louisville diploma up there, but they had this thing that said University of Kentucky too. And the more times they came, the more they had. So that was an important part of it. Steve was remarkable. I talk about Steve's mind. He would introduce people when the continuing education class group would come in. He'd get up in front of them and call them all by name, where they were from, what their wife's name was, what their telephone numbers. First time he ever did that was when we were introduced to the Bluegrass Dental Society. And because, the new dental school, new people, it was the biggest attendance they'd ever had. And I think it was, if I remember, it was something like 92, 96 people. And Steve kind of stood by the front door as people came in. And then Al got up to introduce his faculty. He introduced all of us. And then he said, well, now, in case some of you don't know each other, I'll just have Steve introduce you. And Steve went around that room and introduced 90 people and added stuff like, the child's name or his address, phone number, whatever. It was astounding. So he did that repeatedly. Just remarkable.
He was very special, wasn't he?
He was special.
Yeah.
And then he went on he left and went into the Peace Corps and went into the State Department and became a spy. I don't know what all.
Well, don't say anything more about the spy stuff. But I've heard I got there in '69. It didn't happen in my class. Yeah. But the story that I was told was that he would welcome each student, shake their hand, and put them in. And then he came in and introduced every student and where they're coming from, the college, like they were all the way across there. And it was like, I'd have trouble if there were two students coming in to be able to remember it all. He must have been remarkable.
Yeah, he was. He was great.
But it depicts so much talent was brought here, including you. So much talent was brought here early on in the 60s, 70s too, to put together a very unique dental education experience. And it's I personally, as a graduate and now on the faculty now dean, I'm so proud of what you had done and the leaders had done.
Well, the faculty turnover was a problem for us because other schools were picking people up who had been here.
Yes.
And Al's position on that was, don't worry about it. We recruited this one. We'll get the next one. He said, good. Let them go. Don't worry about it. We're just producing people.
but they produced a lot of a lot of those faculty went on to be deans or assistant deans or whatever.
And department chairman all over the country.
Like 10, you said 17 maybe that went on that way, or
Well,
some number.
there were more than that. I mean, it depends on where you draw the lines,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And, but there was a constant turnover, and that, yeah, you don't find a Harry Lundeen everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Shel Rovin. Shel Rovin's one of the best teachers. You know, he won the best basic science teacher award for 10 years straight or something.
Do you feel comfortable sharing the story you shared with me about Al when it came down to the last get things done and what he went through?
Let me start by saying the first time the six of us with Dan Deal met in the room next door, July 5th, 1961, we had a barred table, wasn't near as nice as this one, and, you know, six, I guess, straight back wooden chairs. We sat down, and the first official words ever spoken in this building, Al Morris asked God for help. A prayer to ask him to help us with this job we were going to have. Now, I'm a kind of heretic in the Holy Land, and I was really impressed. I thought, gosh, I remember that vividly, and I think it's an important part of the history.
What a start.
Maybe that's why. Maybe that's what
did it.
What helped so much. That fall, Mike was out making deals on dental equipment. God knows how much money was involved. He was making and had contracts signed and delivery dates because we had to be ready to go by the 1st of September of '62. We also called ourselves the core faculty, the core prime then. John Mink, Stan Sachs, Jim Little, Judd Hickey. I'm missing somebody important. They had all resigned their jobs at other schools and accepted the job here. This was by about January of '62. We'd accepted about 10 of the 20 students that we accepted for the year. They had all, of course, could have gone to Louisville as well, but they had taken the chance on a new school, and we were busily, continuing to recruit faculty and students and take care of the building. Al got sick, and we didn't know for a while what was wrong. We did find out that he had a severely bleeding ulcer. Ed Pellegrino was chairman of medicine then and told Al he had to go in the hospital. Al lost 20, 25 pounds. He was white as a sheet, gaunt. And we couldn't figure, why don't you take care of this? Well, what had happened that he did not share with any of us was that the university had experienced a severe shortfall in financing for this '62 year. And President Dickey, A.D. Albright, and the rest of the administration had made the decision that the way to get through this thing was just to delay opening the dental school until '63, I guess. No. Well, we didn't know it. Al kept that to himself, knowing that none of us were capable of dealing with the university administration at that level. Al dealt with that by himself. He didn't want us to lose any of the momentum we had, the recruiting, and he didn't want the board to get out that they canceled their agreement with some dental manufacturer, or he couldn't take the people they had already offered jobs to. So you knew that would kill us, because it would have given the dental society then the chance to really hit the legislature, and we would be dead. So he somehow convinced them that that was not the solution, and without any of us knowing the battle he was fighting. But he said any show of weakness by him at that point the university would have, if he'd gone into the hospital, the university would have, well, at a risk of his own life, he saved us. I can make the statement that, in my opinion, there is less than a 50-50 chance we would be here if it weren't for Al. He's never gotten the recognition he deserved. He went on to become executive vice president. He went over as assistant vice president to Willard. And Dr. Willard was a wonderful man. There's no doubt about it. And then he moved up with Singletary.
The president's office, yeah.
He was Singletary's right-hand man for quite a while. He's never had the recognition from the university, certainly not from the dental profession nationally, and not from any of us who were deans. None of us really ever thanked Al in the way he should have been thanked and recognized for what he did.
Have we missed anything, Harry, that you're remembering?
Important sacrifices were made by our families. We there were no Saturdays or Sundays in the first year here, and Al was proud of the fact that he said you could come by here at 9 o'clock at night, and every chairman's office lights were on. We 15-hour days were common. I say one of my greatest failures is I was not much of a father. I didn't give, my wife raised the kids because I was here. Al's wife, Arlene, just was, she was as much of a mother to the whole thing as Al was a father. The families, the wives, the children deserve a hell of a lot of credit. And, look back, that'd be something we'd like to have changed maybe.
I understand.
But this was the most important thing in our lives. It was the most important thing in the best years. Al would say the happiest years he had. The load he carried and the fact that he had the respect of everybody, that's what made this place.
He was a real special guy, wasn't he?
Unbelievable.
The fact that I'm sitting here as the dean is a privilege that I've been granted being here. The fact that it's still in the same room that you and Al all put things together is a great honor to me, because I was fortunate enough to arrive here in 1969 in school. So you were my dean then, and everybody was still here, and then we got after that like that. So I appreciate the history so much. And taking this time today is meaningful to me, and hopefully anyone who finds this thing and has a chance to look at it, things like that. And we'll continue to try to carry on the tradition that you and Al and all the others put together.
Well, don't think about anybody else but Al. Al did it. It was no burden. We believed it.
Yeah.
We believed it.
Mhm.
And whatever small role we played was nothing compared to his.
Well, he's up there looking down at you with a big smile now. When we're talking about this.
Well,
That's great.
I hope you're right.